how do we keep the Notre Dame spirit alive all over the world to make sure that the people always have a home here, that people always feel connected.
From the campus of Our Lady's University, this is For Good, Stories from Notre Dame, a behind-the-scenes glimpse into life under the Golden Dome and the powerful stories that drive Notre Dame to become a force for good in the world. Hello and welcome to For Good, Stories from Notre Dame. The University of Notre Dame is home to one of the strongest and most engaged Alumni Association networks in all of higher education. And this is thanks to the tireless efforts of our world-class Notre Dame Alumni Association. Today, we are joined by the inspirational leader guiding the work of the NDAA, Executive Director Dolly Duffy. Thanks so much, Dolly, for taking time to be with us in this beautiful auditorium here in the Eck Visitor Center, just adjacent to your offices. So let's start out I can't hear this enough, but tell us a little bit about your own Notre Dame journey. I've been to your little hometown. How did you come to Notre Dame, and what's kept you here and so passionate about the place after so many years?
Well, first of all, Lou, thanks for the opportunity to do this. You and I go back a long ways, all the way to our freshman year in 1980. Yeah. So who would have thought? But my journey to Notre Dame, I've told it a number of times, but I grew up in rural South Dakota in a little town that was about the same size as our freshman class. And I had never been to Notre Dame. As a matter of fact, I never knew anyone who went to Notre Dame. But we used to watch Notre Dame on TV. And interestingly enough, not just football, but basketball, because my brothers were big basketball players. And so whenever we got a chance to see that, it just seared in us like the importance. And as you know, all four of my grandparents were born in Ireland, one of whom my grandmother homesteaded as a single woman in rural South Dakota. So this idea that we were Irish and so proud of it really was the beginning of that. But it wasn't until I got into high school and I thought, maybe I could go to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And so I applied and I got in. And I often say, of course I got in because I was from South Dakota, right? There aren't many of us. And I went to my dad and he said, you're going to have to make the decision sight unseen because we can't afford to take you out so you can see the campus. But I don't know if we can afford for you to go, which was an understatement many times over. And as I thought about it, I remember saying to him, I get teared up because he's no longer with us, but I said, this will tell you that I didn't really know Notre Dame, because I said, just let me go for 1 year. Let me know what it's about. I've always wanted to, and then I'll come home after that year. Well, we know no one leaves Notre Dame after a year voluntarily,
right? And
that you can't go and leave. And of course, somehow he knew that. So he consented to me going to Notre Dame, and he drove me out, and I came to Notre Dame.
That's incredible. And I just have to share that I had the privilege, as you know, of being there for your father's funeral, and in that very small town in Fort Pierre, South Dakota, and I saw your little homestead, and I knew that you grew up in a modest background, but I had no idea that you could cram as many siblings and family members in that very, very small home. And your sister Kitty, who followed you here to Notre Dame, she must have caught me kind of looking at the place and the kind of dusty roads of the town and the very modest church. And she said, amazing that Notre Dame would take a chance on two girls here from Fort Pierre, South Dakota. And it really kind of hit home for me. It really is very powerful. And I think about Father Bob's announcement in his inaugural address that Notre Dame is going to go to no loans for their financial aid packages for students in this country, and is going to go need blind for any students anywhere in the world. Huge moves For somebody that came from that background that you just described, what does that mean to you personally?
It's so incredibly important because I think that I was just naive enough to not even think about how do you pay for it, and then ultimately what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that oftentimes families have to make really hard decisions about not sending their child to Notre Dame because there's just not enough financial aid. This changes all of that. This makes Notre Dame accessible and affordable for absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
And it's pretty exciting. I was blessed because when I got here and I realized I was going to stay longer than a year, I went to financial aid. And at the time, there was not a lot of financial aid packages. But Father Joe Carey said, I have a benefactor, and they will help you through Notre Dame. I never learned who it was. He said, but you have to promise me something. I said, okay, I will. Promise you anything. And he said that you will someday do the same for someone else. And Father Joe Carey was really the reason I got to stay at Notre Dame, because otherwise I might have thought I had to leave. And then how beautiful when I ultimately came back here and we went to Mass when we moved here, the first Sunday here, and who is at the front of the Basilica? Father Joe Carey. And it was the first time I got to introduce my children to this incredible priest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so incredible to have you back here on campus and leading this amazing Alumni Association. You are as passionate as the day you arrived. I mean, your can-do attitude. There's no challenge. There's no adversity that seems to get you down, and you have this indefatigable work ethic. You're traveling to clubs. You're meeting with alumni, parents, and friends all over the world, nonstop. Your appetite for this mission is amazing to behold. What keeps you going? Where does this come from?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's a very, very high compliment. It comes from a place where Notre Dame chose me to do this job, right? And it is an incredible job. I love what I do. And so I have to give it everything because otherwise somebody else should have taken the job. And so oftentimes people will say, why don't you just say no? And I said, because I wasn't hired to say no, right? I was hired to say yes.
Yeah.
And everywhere I look, there's opportunity to engage more alumni, to find what's really in their hearts. How do we keep the Notre Dame spirit alive all over the world? How do we do it in individuals to make them love the school that is either their alma mater or just a place they've always loved? They sent their children here, so many different reasons.
Yeah. Well, your energy and passion is clearly contagious. And I want to talk about different aspects of what you're doing with the Alumni Association. And so let's begin with class reunions. It's every June, the first weekend in June, thousands of Notre Dame alumni in increments of every 5 years, and then affinity groups in addition to that come back to campus. Tell us a little bit about what goes into the operation of an alumni reunion. And for that alum that might be watching that has never been back for a reunion or hasn't been back in many years, what would you say to that person that would entice them to come back?
Well, I mean, anecdotally, I will say that every year we have somebody who's never come back, and then all of a sudden they come back for the first time, and it might be their 25th or their 30th. And they just are so disappointed that they missed all the other reunions. Because at that point, things are kind of level and everybody is so enjoying everyone else and all of the things that we can do. And it's a big reunion, but it's also like a dozen smaller reunions that are all going on at the same time.
And what are some of the components of the reunion weekend that really pop for you?
Well, it all starts on Thursday night with a welcome reception, but it really starts in my heart with the class mass. And in every class mass, we read the names of the deceased members, as you know, of the class, to remember that those who aren't with us will always be with us. And so we do that in individual, and then we go to a class dinner. But throughout the time we're there, we look at all of the markers of things that people love about Notre Dame. You know, a chance to stay in the dorms. I know I stayed in the dorm last time.
You did?
For our 40th, 3 nights. in the dorm. I forgot, those towels are really little. But it's great fun because my dear husband, Dan, said the best times happen early in the morning and late at night, and you can't be at home. Right. I might mind you that he didn't stay in the dorm. But so we do academic sessions, we do tours, just all of those things that bring us together.
No, it's fantastic. One of my favorite things that you do here from the Alumni Association is what you do with FaithND. And the engagement, the diaspora, how that has grown it exceeds everyone's imagination. But also, we're coming upon Sacred Stories for the Advent of the year, which is one of the favorite outgrowths of FaithND. Give us a little bit of a sense of the expansiveness now of FaithND, and what can we expect for this Advent season with Sacred Stories?
So FaithND is about 110,000 people that receive the daily gospel reflection with a reflection written by a different person every day of the year. So 365 days of the year, which is maybe by all accounts the only one that exists. And usually it's written other ones by one person throughout the year. And the open rate on it is 62%. I have to tell that because it's a little bit of bragging. But if you think about it, it means that we get to have close to 24 million faith touches with alumni, parents, and friends of the university throughout the year. Yeah. And then when Advent rolls around, we have a different video of a person telling their sacred story. It's been sacred places. It's been a number of different things. Right now it's sacred stories. And the stories range all over the board, but there's only one per day. And it comes out kind of the night before, later in the night. And then you can see it the next morning as well. It is one of my favorite times of the year. It's like, honestly, it is like Christmas every day. Yeah. And I try to restrain myself from seeing all of them in advance so that it can unfold for me as well. And to give you an idea of the impact of that, again, going back to, I'm kind of a numbers person, but we had last year in 21 Days of Advent, we had 650,000 views.
Wow.
Right? It's incredible.
Who are some of the people that have done the Sacred Story reflections, and who might we, if you're willing to reveal, who might be some of the surprises for this year?
So we've had, one of my favorites will always be Ryan Harris, talking about what it was like to come to
former Notre Dame football player and Super Bowl champion. Yeah, great
broadcaster,
great guy.
Really incredible human being, talking about his journey to Notre Dame as a Muslim and how Notre Dame made him a better Muslim and how he was part of all of it. There's so many stories about people and what's happened to them. And what we try to do is we try to get a few people who people know, like Ryan, but then people that you don't know, but their stories are so compelling and so amazing. And it's the student stories, right? The student stories always touch me. And so you can look forward to that again this year.
So in addition to there's head coach Marcus Freeman has done this, Father Bob Dowd, the president. It's a really an eclectic mix of people.
And last year we did Father Bob Dowd's story before he became president. Right. And then we had to come back around and have him end, which was really a lot of fun. It was early on him saying, I'm Father Bob Dowd, president-elect of Notre Dame.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the things that amazes me is you have somebody here that goes every day, that receives through FaithND prayer requests, and they go walk to the grotto from this building every day to personally read the prayers and then answers them via email on a daily basis. And then quarterly, there are prayers. Yep. To me, probably the most moving thing that I engage in annually is going to those quarterly rosaries at the grotto, where then we get sheets and read those prayers. Tell everyone a little bit more about this. It's just incredible.
I always go back to the Dooley letter at the grotto, where he says how I long to be at the grotto. Away from the grotto, Dooley just prays. But if I could be back at the grotto, my heart could sing. Some version of that. And yet at the same time, you think how important is the grotto to people if it's a digital grotto? Like you're asking someone else to pray for you. And I questioned that when I first got here and we started growing this ministry. And then I realized it's incredibly important. And so people, when they really long for prayer and they long for something, they just say, would you go to the grotto? Would you light a candle? And so it's always a lot of fun when somebody for the first time comes to that and they say, whoa, you really do pray every single one of them.
Yeah.
And we do. And to All Souls
Roughly
Day,
how many a day?
well, we get thousands every month, right? And then here's an example, All Souls Day. So that's coming up. We've got the prayer service. We stream it live. Everyone can be a part of it. But a couple years ago, I decided to take a look at that and figure out, for All Souls Day, sometimes people have lost a lot of loved ones. And so one year, we counted the names and looked across all of it, and we prayed by name for 48,000 people.
Wow.
At the grotto, right?
Wow.
And it's powerful because when you do that, it changes you.
Yeah.
You realize that everyone, the humanity that we are, we all have similar challenges.
It is, and it's one of the most humbling experiences as you read through those prayers, some of which are heart-wrenching, and then every once in a while you come across somebody that you know.
Yes.
And, obviously it's meant to be confidential. We don't share that, but it just, it skips a beat.
Yeah, it does.
Hard as you go. On another front, IrishCompass has been an innovation that you and the team have pioneered in the last 10, 20 years that really helps our alumni network long after they've left the university, job-wise, in mentorship, and guidance in the career world. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, IrishCompass is such an important part of what we do because when we think about how can we not just touch people but support them, and oftentimes that's a time when they need it the most. And so we have just under 40,000 people on IrishCompass, alumni and students, and the students change, as they move through and they become alumni. But I'm amazed at the stories that we hear that if you're an alum here, or if you're a student here, you can reach out to any alum. And if you set a meeting with them, 95% of those happen. That's a statistic that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Right.
And so a lot of times we have a student that just needs a little guidance and they want to talk to somebody in the field. They want to learn a little bit more. And our alumni are incredible. And then there's job postings and there's mentoring and there's all of it right there. And it's really exciting and something that we're going to continue to focus on.
Yeah, it's an amazing network. ThinkND is also something that you pioneered in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's a way to basically connect Notre Dame's intellectual assets and to facilitate dialogue and learnings for our alumni, parents, and friends everywhere. Tell us a little bit about ThinkND.
So much online content is out there, and what we would hear all the time is, yeah, but I want more Notre Dame. I wish I could go back and take classes or, do all of the things that we wish we had. Not you. You were very studious.
Exactly.
I know that. But we wish we could have studied a little harder and paid a little more attention. And so now we have that. And ThinkND has over 4,000 pieces of content. And one of the interesting things about that is it was launched right before COVID, so 5 years ago. And you think, that could be a real challenge. It actually was a gift because people were home and they were on their computers and they had a chance to go. But we have an amazing faculty here. And so many of them stepped up and said, I have time, I have the interest, I'll create content just for this. So we have a lot of original content. We sometimes will
Give
take
us an
articles.
example of something that really, again, sings for you.
Well, I'll talk about the very first one was God in the Good Life, Megan Sullivan, Paul Blasco, and they literally put some things together. We did something in this space as well, specifically for that.
So two philosophy professors that have a class on campus that focuses on what is your vocation, what is your calling, how do you live out God's call in your particular life.
And you think about one of the really favorite classes that Father Dan Grudy does, right? And so he has done that. And I think that he even interviewed you, and you were part of that whole series. Yeah. So they've developed series just for this. Yeah. And it just really delights people that they have the ability at no cost to just go right on and take a look at whatever they want.
One of the things I love about you and your team and the Alumni Association, its board and all of its leaders throughout the clubs and classes, is you are always pushing yourselves to be better, to innovate. And one of the things that you've come up with recently, and I think you've done 2 years now, is the Global Day of Service.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that grew from year 1 to year 2. What is it? And then what are your goals for year 3?
I would never, it's amazing how quickly that grew. And really, in many ways, we were inspired by our young alumni who did a version of this on their own. And we've got a great young ND board, and they work throughout all the clubs. And so we were inspired by that and said, let's take that even larger. And so when our clubs do community service, every year, every place they are. But we wanted to make a statement, a Notre Dame moment of rolling it all up. And so we do the Notre Dame Day of Global Service. And this last year, Lou, we had almost, I think, all 50 states, 6 continents, and 30 countries all did service projects on the same day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And all different types of service, right?
Yeah.
And you even had Burkina Faso.
Yes, Burkina Faso did. I mean, it's amazing how many of our international clubs said we're going to be a part of this. And I went out and cleaned up a park in New York City. I went out there the year before I was here. It's something that we will definitely continue. And then what we tried to do also is give people the ability so that families who maybe weren't near a project could do something themselves and be a part of it as well. So we want everyone to find themselves in each of these things.
Talk about embodying Father Soren's vision to be a force for good in the world, to mobilize that many people at the same time every year to be doing works of service on behalf of those in need is just beautiful.
It's so much a part of our DNA at Notre Dame. I mean, it really is. We are continually blessed to have alumni parents and friends that someone once said to me from another school. We were talking about what it's like to be at Notre Dame versus another school. And he said, wow, I always wish that we had your alumni. And I was a little uncomfortable. I said, what do you mean? He said, because you never have to spark their passion. You just have to figure out how to harness it. Yeah. They're all standing in line wanting to do good for Notre Dame. Yeah,
that's very accurate, and it makes what we do such a blessing and such a privilege.
It does.
I'm blown away every year by Family Volunteer Camp. And tell us a little bit about that, and to think that so many of our alumni and their families seek to come back and spend a week on campus each summer to do service to the poorest of the poor in the community blows me away. But tell us a little bit about Family Volunteer Camp.
Yeah, it's the highlight of my summer, right? And we have families that put their application in and nowhere else than Notre Dame, and I mean that. Like, that sounds like bragging. I might be bragging a little bit because they're amazing. We have to run a lottery. And we turn away as many people as we accept. So we do 3 weeks, about 125 people per week. We start with Mass on Sunday night. And then throughout the week, 6 hours, roughly 5 to 6 hours each day, these families with children age 9 and up go out and they volunteer and they do work in the community. And it's all across the South Bend community. And it's the Michiana, I would say, greater area. It's a lot of fun. You know what's the most fun to watch? You have a new family there, and the kids are a little bit not sure that they want to do this. And so on Sunday night at Mass, they're sitting with their parents, right? And they're just sitting there. And then by Monday night, they've met the other. Tuesday, by Thursday night, right? They're all over on their own tables. The parents are over here scheming on how they're going to make sure their parents come back to Family Volunteer Camp the next year.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so great.
You have so many families that talk about this. I mean, just think about taking your vacation time to go and do service. I mean, it's what Notre Dame teaches us to do, and that so many have lined up to do this each year is really incredible.
I have to tell you this, that we have one family who shared the story after their first year, that they went home, and as they started getting close to making a decision about what they were going to do in the summer, they said, okay, we're thinking about Disney this summer. And the kids said, no, we want Family Volunteer Camp.
I love it. We could be a threat to Disney.
Yeah.
I love it. Talk a little bit about the club structure. It has been something that we've inherited that's been around for a long time. How unique is it still? I know you meet on a regular basis with the Alumni Association directors of the top 25 schools, and our club structure, both domestically and abroad. How expansive is it, and how unique is it?
Yeah, it's 260 clubs, 220 domestically, and 40 all throughout the world. And the thing is, there's so many unique elements of it, right?
Yeah.
That we have something called the 6 C's, and they're not in front of me, but I'll it's community service, just what we talk about. It's current students, it's Catholic Christian spirituality, it's camaraderie. And it's all of these. And long before I was there, they came up with the 6 C's, and I love it because they fill out an annual report every year to talk about what they did that falls within those, so that we can have an awards night, which is like the biggest party ever as we announce the clubs that win awards. But more importantly, the value that they provide in their communities on so many levels is really special. And and then they fill their own ranks. So we are not saying, okay, it's time for you to get a new president. Some clubs do it every year or two. Yeah. Sometimes they don't have anybody in line, and so somebody does it for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
This is heroic. And first of all, you don't call them alumni clubs.
Right.
You call them the Notre Dame Club of Scranton, Pennsylvania,
right,
or the Notre Dame Club of Baghdad.
Exactly.
And so tell us a little bit about the fact that you've welcomed in and engaged parents and friends. And in some cases, they lead these clubs.
Parents are such an important part, right? Because for some of them, they never knew about the Notre Dame Club till they dropped their child off, and then they end up helping to run it. So the parents are great. But we have lots of, going back to 100 years, we're going to celebrate the term Subway alumni when we're at the game in New York against Army. And this idea of Subway alum, and people sometimes ask, is that a negative term? Like, no, that's like the greatest term of endearment, because they're a part of who we are. And there are clubs, I love to tell the story about, some of the Pennsylvania clubs, like the Notre Dame Club of Schuylkill County, Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, where they're probably 95% non-alums, and they carry on the tradition like you would never believe.
Nobody else has anything like that.
No,
right?
No.
I mean, not even close.
One of the other schools in this consortium that I'm in said, "Why do you even care about them?" I said, "If you have to ask, I can't even explain."
Yeah.
I said, "They're really truly part of the family." So much so, as you know, that a few years ago we created a permanent position on our board for a Subway alum, a non-alum.
People want to be engaged. And we hear that all the time. How can I be involved more in Notre Dame? There's so many ways through the Alumni Association to be engaged, through the local club, to serve on it's an elected positions on the alumni board.
Yes.
And many of them. How would you make it appeal to somebody listening about how they can get engaged?
Because they can make such a difference. So we have 9 boards, and then we have the NDAA board. And in those cases, it's elected, but you can step up. We're always looking for really good, talented volunteers.
Give us some examples of those 9 affinity boards.
Well, I go back to the original one under Father Hesburgh, where we have the Black alumni, Native American, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific boards. Those have been around for a long time. I think the Black alumni might have been first. And those boards replenish their ranks. They do all kinds of incredible work. And we have the Diversity Council, then that's also part of that out in the clubs. We have lots of them.
And you have the senior alumni of Notre Dame. You have young alumni. Yeah.
We have ND Women Connect.
Right.
We have our ARC board.
Yep. That's right.
Which is our LGBT board.
Yep.
It's an incredible group.
So we want people to feel like they belong, not just that they're well received, but they're known, loved, and served.
Yes.
To be a part of the Alumni Association, whatever their backgrounds are, and so forth. And you could do a great job.
And thank you. There's so many talented people out there,
right,
that can make us a better organization. We have an incredible staff, as you said earlier, a staff of 40, and they are so talented. But we only have 40. Yeah. And so our ranks are often expanded by our volunteer networks.
In this area of university relations, we have 2 large departments, obviously one being development and the other one being the Alumni Association. And we talk behind the scenes on a regular basis that We know that there's so much pressure on development to raise more money for all the different aspirations and ways that Notre Dame can be more impactful. So we recognize many of you who keep receiving appeals, both personally and through electronically and through other means, to financially support Notre Dame and its many different endeavors. But the Alumni Association is an incredibly important counterpart, which is all about engagement for engagement's sake. And it's all about, saying to the alumni, we want to continue to develop you and your education spiritually, everything else, and give you opportunities to give back. Why is that increasingly unique in higher education? Again, looking out among your peers. Yeah. And why is that vitally important in your eyes?
Well, I mean, it's almost unheard of in higher ed, right? Because we're playing, I often think we're playing the long game, right? We're there, we're the long-term marketers of the university to make sure that people always have a home here, that people always feel connected. It doesn't matter if they can ever give any money at all, right? It means they matter. Right. And I think that's really, really important that we send that message over and over again, because you may not be able to give money or you may not be able to give time. There's all different things, but you might be a volunteer that helps find the best students that we can, by working with admissions. There's lots of things that the volunteer, you do things in your community where you're volunteering in the name of Notre Dame to make your community better. Right. There's all kinds of things. Yeah.
So Frank O'Brien, somebody who is beloved to the both of us and the O'Brien family, who passed away not long ago, used to tell me the story as if to kind of both teach and admonish me at the same time, that you got to understand how distinct we are from other universities. And he said that if I go to bed at 11 o'clock and I get a call at midnight that there's some Notre Dame student who found my name through the alumni directory and is stranded at the airport, I'm getting out of bed without asking another question and driving in my pajamas down to pick him up a half an hour away, bring him back to have a night to sleep at our house, and then taking him back in the morning to the airport. And he said, you won't find that to happen regularly at other universities and other alumni associations. He said, don't screw it up. As you said again, harness this energy. That responsibility falls largely on you and your team. It's both a privilege and a burden. How do you think about that?
I think it's an incredible privilege, right? It's not a burden, right? It's only a burden if it's not what you want. Yeah. But it's a privilege because we get to advance that. And we go back to this idea of when we were talking about IrishCompass and like 95% rate of, yes, I'll take a meeting with you. Or, yes, I'll do this. That's a simple form. And then the other one is what Frank O'Brien talked about. You and I know tons of stories where somebody's in a hospital far away and families step up and they bring food and they do all of it. It's an obligation, and we get to try to figure out ways to make it happen over and over again. That's why it's a privilege.
Well, you do it so incredibly well.
Thank you.
Dolly, thank you for your extraordinary leadership, your service to Notre Dame, your unrelenting passion for the place, and constantly putting others first and setting that example for us. We always close these segments and we invite you to join in with us. We'll close with a prayer to Our Lady, to whom this university is dedicated and through whom all of our actions emanate. So please, together, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Take care, God bless, and go Irish.